Good day, everyone. Eric Olsen from Helps on YouTube Live. Welcome to our YouTube Live channel today on June 23rd. Good to have you here. Uh, you see that we've got a chat feature. You can put your questions there. I'll try to answer them. My name is Eric Olsen, an attorney for 46 years, the founder of Helps. Helps is a national law firm that represents seniors and disabled to a debt they can't afford to pay. We protect seniors and disabled persons from debt collector harassment. We do that under a federal law called the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Provides if you're represented by an attorney, debt collectors can no longer call or send demand letters to you anymore. They have to leave you alone. Okay, that's what we do. And then our second mission is to educate seniors how they can maintain their financial independence. So I'm assuming you can hear me. It's always nice when someone says, I hear you loud and clear. Okay. So thank you. Um, so I've got a topic to talk about, but I see there's a few questions. I'll get to those, and then I'll get to this topic for a second. Marion asked, if I get a judgment, I don't have to go to court if I'm on Social Security, do I? No, you shouldn't have to go to court. When people enroll in Helps, and if they're sued, we ask them to get us a copy of the lawsuit. We usually only need the first 2 or 3 pages, and we're going to send a letter to the attorney who sued you. We're going to let the attorney know that your income is protected. You're not going to go to court. We understand they're going to get a judgment. And they'll eventually get a judgment, okay? And then you might get some other papers. Get that to us, but it'd be highly unusual that you would ever have to go to court, okay? Mary says, it seems so peaceful. With no mail from attorneys or collection companies. Yeah, when we first started Helps back in 2012, we had a motto. I don't know if it's still our motto. It says, Helps brings peace back to your life. Because I'd hear that all the time. Okay. Kat says, hey, I got 2 letters were sent to Citibank. The third account is Shell, and I'm paying on time. Reduced credit line from $800 to $200. Well, if you have a credit card, you turn into Helps and you got a credit card that's backed by the same bank, then it would typically be the practice of that third credit card that you wanted to keep to be canceled. If a bank sees you're not paying other credit cards, they're going to cancel another credit card you have that you're current on. Now, there might be an exception. This could be one. Credit cards can lower credit limits. We don't see it happening all the time. It does happen occasionally. And you're right, a credit line is not free money. Good. So, Eric, if letters are sent to creditors and I am getting bills with late financial charges, that will wreck my credit with other cards I'm paying on time, will it do that? Yeah, it may impact your credit somewhat. Generally, my experience is, and this is from decades, is that if you have a credit card with a bank and you stay current on that credit card, they're not going to cut you off. They're going to let you keep that credit card. And I guess it is possible they may lower the credit limit depending on how much is there. But I don't hear a lot of people even telling me that their credit limit's been lowered. But some do, okay? Okay, so the topic I had for today was about how credit cards can entrap seniors. And so this is what I wrote down, and I'll just go over this to you and you may have experienced this, first thing is that seniors frankly are kind of vulnerable. Why are they vulnerable? Because we live on a fixed income. Before when we had a younger, we may have had a job and we could get a second job, but once we're retired and we're getting a pension, then it's set, okay, and then it goes up a little bit each year according to inflation, hopefully, and sometimes it doesn't go up. But we live on fixed incomes, and a lot of times that fixed income, and some of it may go away. Maybe a spouse passes away, and now we're don't get as much income as we had before. Um, um, so, but our expenses still stay the same, and they may go up because of inflation. So sometimes seniors get trapped into using credit cards to pay for necessities because they don't have the cash to pay for it. Okay, so we're vulnerable because we're on fixed income. Next, if you can't keep up with the credit card bill, then interest on the credit card compounds, and it becomes increasingly more difficult to pay. And I put down the third, which is kind of a duplicate of what if we get into the habit of using the credit cards to pay for necessities. Another reason that we're vulnerable to credit cards is that there's scams, identity theft, predatory lending, payday loans, high interest rates. All those put pressure on us, so we use credit cards to take the pressure off. And then the third thing I talked about, is kind of management difficulties. The more debt we have and the more we try to pay it, it gets more difficult to manage it. Okay, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. But the good message from Helps is if you find yourself in a bind, trapped with debt you can't afford to pay, lawmakers have protected your Social Security and your pension. It can't be garnished or taken from you. Even if you get sued, it's available for your needs. You can choose to stop paying it. Now, I don't encourage people to, not pay their debt, but frankly, I want seniors to understand that if they can't afford to pay it, if they're going without their basic needs, if they need the money for their food, for their medicine, for their housing, for transportation, lawmakers protected that money for a reason. They realize that you need it, okay, and you can choose to stop paying it. And there's a federal law that says if you're represented by an attorney, debt collectors have to leave you alone. They have to call us, not you. And that's what people do when they find out about Helps. We talk to them, we interview them, and if they choose to enroll, they can enroll over the phone in just a couple minutes, and we click a button. You get an email that says "Welcome to Helps," confirms you're a member of Helps. Then you get us the name and address of the collectors and the account number. We send them out a cease and desist letter, and they're going to leave you alone. Peace is going to come back to your life. Okay, so that's what we do. Mrs. H asks, do you know besides the prepaid credit cards that are with Phil Tyrone to help rebuild credit, are there any more cards he will offer for a senior to apply for that? I mean, you don't have to go through his credit cards. I mean, you can get on the internet and just type in prepaid credit cards, and you can find a lot of them out there. Okay, there's different companies that offer for a prepaid credit card is almost having like a little savings account. You pay a little bit money in a checking account, and then you have a credit card that you borrow against, but it's secured by that money you deposited. Okay. So Farmhouse asks, if you get several judgments and have a lot of equity in your home, will the creditors go after your home? My homestead exemption is 250,000. House is worth a lot more due to inflating housing market. It's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors, if they get a judgment, to go after a person's home, even if you have equity in the home over and above the homestead exemption for your state. Now, what do I mean by that? States have different laws that protect a certain amount of equity in a home. What's equity? So if you got a home that's worth 300,000 and you owe 100,000 on it, you have 200,000 in equity. Maybe the state has a homestead exemption that protects 100,000. Then in that event, if you had a home that was worth 300, you owed 100, and the exemption was 100,000, then you've got 100,000 equity that isn't exempt under state law. And if you owed a credit card debt and they get a judgment, would they go after your home? Uh, it's you could envision a theory with that they would, but the practice is they don't do it for a lot of different reasons. I mean, it just virtually never happens. And I know I've been doing this for 46 years. I can't recall a time when a creditor for a credit card company has ever gone after a person's home on a credit card debt that they owed. They're happy to sue, get a lien there, and hopefully they get paid at some point in the future. There's a lot of reasons. Maybe when you pass away, or if you refinance or sell the home. But then if you own the home with a spouse and the judgment is just against you, let's say, when you pass away, the property would go to your spouse, judgment disappears, credit card doesn't need to be paid. So no, you shouldn't worry about losing your home, okay? We're always willing to talk to you about this. If they were ever to do something like that or try to do something, there's things that could be done to stop it or prevent it. But we don't even get into that because if it's not going to happen, it's kind of a waste of breath to talk about it. The flag board. No, I bought it this weekend in Mandeville, Louisiana, at a little farm show. I thought it was kind of pretty. Thought it'd be appropriate to have an American flag on the wall because these laws that protect us are American laws, and they're beautiful laws. Okay. They raised my insurance, but they never told me why. Well, a lot of time in some states, insurance can be raised based on your credit rating. Now, if you're worried about that, we do have a program called 7 Steps to a 720 Credit Score with Phil Tyrone. After you've been part of HELPS for at least 90 days, you can call us on the phone. We'll give you a link. You can enroll in that program, and you can rebuild your credit. Interestingly enough, your credit is based on your recent credit history. So if you have old debt that you don't pay, you don't need to pay it. But if you start incurring new debt and start paying that and staying current on that debt, okay, and keep paying it, like you incur a debt and pay it that month, you can rebuild your credit within a year and a half to 2 years. And you're right. Sunset makes a good point. If you're worried about your insurance rates, a lot of times I'll tell people, if you got an older model car, maybe you only need liability. You don't need comprehensive and collision. That would cut your insurance rates down a whole lot. Or you can raise the deductible. If you're a good driver, instead of having a $200 deductible, you can have a $1,000 deductible. There's different things you can do to lower your insurance rates. Okay. So I've got things that I've written down that people have inquired, and I go over those as we have questions that come up. And this person from Florida writes in, I'm on Social Security disability. I'm struggling to pay my bills. I have a couple of personal loans and credit cards. My bills are more than my income. Can you help me? Well, of course, yeah, we can help you. That's what we do. We're going to tell you can stop paying the debt. You can stop paying the personal loans, paying the credit cards. You can call us on the phone. We'll go over this with you. And if you can call right now if someone has a question, okay? And then we have paralegals and attorneys online that will ask you some questions about basic questions about your finances. And a lot of times people will call us 2, 3, 4, or 5 times before they decide to enroll in HELPS. So you can always call. So yes, we can help. That's why we're called HELPS. We helps people, right? The debt consolidation companies keep calling me now. Well, I hear this. With rare exception, a debt management or debt settlement or debt consolidation company will never tell a senior, by the way, you don't need our help because all your income is protected. Instead, they enroll seniors in debt management or debt settlement, sometimes putting a senior into utter poverty, making a payment they can't afford to pay. So if you're with debt management, or debt settlement, and you're struggling, think about when you enrolled. When you enrolled, did they ask you, were you on Social Security, or did they tell you, if you told them you were on Social Security, that you didn't have to pay the debt, that your income was protected? Most assuredly, I think your answer is going to be no, Eric. They never told me that. Well, why didn't they tell you that? If they would have told you that, you would have realized that you didn't need to pay the debt. Did they tell you that there was a means to stop the creditors from bothering you? The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act provides if you send in a collector a cease and desist letter, they have to leave you alone. No, they didn't tell you that. So what does that tell me about these companies? They don't give seniors the complete truth in advising them. And they do that because they act in their own financial interest, not your financial interest. And you've probably never heard me say that before. Okay, this person writes in and they say, I am permanently and totally disabled. And they capitalize permanently. And they describe their disability, and they are definitely disabled, and including being blind. I've been on Social SSI for 4 months. I have outstanding student loan debt from student loans from Bank of America that is about 20 years old. When I received my second direct deposit, America First Credit Union froze my account. 2 months later, I found out that AF's American First Credit Union gave 3 months Social Security payments to Bank of America. When I asked to see Bank of America's court order, they refused to show it to me. When I asked the bank headquarters in Utah, they refused to give me any information about my account. Who froze it? Copy of the court order said they refused to give me any information. I changed banks to Wells Fargo. And they say the same thing happened. Then I found out my cousin was defrauding my checking account. Yeah, normally, so I don't know the history. We're going to call him and see if we can help him. But first off, one thing is, if you've been listening to me, you understand that if someone were to sue you and get a judgment, and they tried to garnish your bank account, your bank or credit union, under federal rules put in effect in 2012, have to examine your account, and if money came from a federal source like Social Security, they times that times 2 and protect that sum from garnishment. So if you got $1,500 in Social Security each month, $3,000 in your bank account is protected automatically from garnishment. Now, obviously, if someone had access to your account and was trying to fraud you, like your cousin, like this person says, there could be some problem. And then he had a disadvantage. It says he was blind and he had some other issues going on. But we'll call him and we'll get it worked out. We'll help him. Okay. So I got something to show you here. Here we go. So sometimes I talk about the National Council on Aging. And here's their website. So from their website, I'm going to show you this. And let's look at their mission statement. Their mission is to improve the lives of millions of older adults, especially those who are struggling. These guys get $50 million a year from the United States government. Okay? A lot of money. That's their mission statement. Improve the lives of millions of adult adults, especially those who are struggling. Now, I suspect a lot of seniors who are struggling are ones that struggle financially. Right? Yeah. So here's an article from last May from senior, not this last May, a year ago May, okay, from National Council on Aging, whose mission is to help seniors, especially those that are struggling. And you'll find this interesting. Getting help with credit card debt, 5 things older adults should know. Now, what's the first thing that I notice on this article? right over here. Created in partnership with Bank of America. Huh. This article that I'm going to show you in a minute was created in partnership with Bank of America, who issues credit cards. So let's see what the article says. And this is from from National Council on Aging, that's supposed to be helping seniors who are struggling. Okay. So let's look at the article real quick. And I may have shown this article before, but it just irritates me. Okay. They talk about the problems of older adults, about their financial problems. That's what it talks about, their financial problems. So National Council, they know seniors have financial problems. So this is the what can I do about my credit card debt? These are the keys. Contact your credit card company. Okay. Do you think the credit card company is ever going to tell you that you don't have to pay the debt? No. Are they going to tell you that your income is protected? If you're a senior, you don't have to pay it? No. They're not going to tell you that. No way. Okay. They're just going to try to get you to pay the debt in some manner or fashion. Okay, what's their second suggestion? Understand two ways to pay off credit card debt. Well, they call about this snowball method and avalanche method. The problem is almost half of seniors have incomes within 200% of the poverty line. They struggle. They don't have any extra income. They've ran up their credit cards trying to keep up with life to a point where they can't afford to pay them. They don't have any snow at all to have an avalanche or snowball to be able to pay the debt. They're not able to do it. Okay? So snowball or avalanche is out. Now, what's their third suggestion? Consider a debt management plan. Well, like we've talked about, and it talks about debt management. Debt management plans eliminates the need to juggle different payments with you. Offered through certified credit counseling. Well, the problem with a debt management plan is, with rare exceptions, like I said, they're not going to tell a senior that your income is protected. Why is that? Because they get supported financially by the credit card companies. If they were to tell you that your income is protected, they'd act against the interests of those that pay them, even if they're nonprofit. Bank of America donates to National Council on Aging, which is a nonprofit, and they donate to debt management plans. So if you're a nonprofit and you want to stay in existence, you count on donations. Are you going to act against the interest of the person who donates you the money? No, and they don't. So what's the fourth thing they're going to tell you here? Participate in credit counseling. Well, yeah. And then the fifth thing, get your money muscles in peak shape, whatever that means. Okay. In this art, that's the end of the article. Okay, this is from the National Council on Aging. Did they ever say one thing about the fact that if you're a senior and you're struggling and you're lower income or poor and you can't afford to pay the debt, that you're going to be okay, that you don't have to pay the debt? No, they never said one word about that. Now, you can see how I can get pretty cynical on these kind of things. Okay, let's see if I've got more questions here I could deal with. Tank says, I'm being sued by a debt collector on behalf of Bank of America. My only income is Social Security. Don't need to worry. Now, if you're a helps client, we're going to tell you to get us a copy of the lawsuit. And all we need is the first 2 or 3 pages, the name of the attorney, their address, the case number. We're going to send an attorney a letter, let him know that your income is protected. You're not going to pay the debt. You don't need to go to court. You're going to be fine. You don't need to worry. So this person contacts us from Indiana. I recently retired at the age of 62, and my only source of income is my late husband's pension and widow's benefits from his Social Security. I don't have any savings and use his death benefits to pay off other debt. Probably didn't need to do that, but I still got plenty of debt because she says I have about 25,000 in credit card debt that I used after my husband's death, going from two incomes to one, and a travel trailer payment. And she lives in the travel trailer because I can't afford something else. I'm being sued for the bank for the trailer payments. I have fallen behind on that. I made an agreement with the bank to have the payments automatically withdrawn from my Social Security monies, or they would review us as a trailer and I would be homeless. In addition, I had to pay them $3,300 for late payments. Is there anything you can do for my situation? Well, it looks like you got the trailer. She got the trailer situation straightened. She got caught up on that. I don't know where the $3,300 came from, but that's fine. You do not have to pay the credit card debt, the $25,000 to $30,000 you owe that she said in her note to us that she don't have to pay that anymore. Okay, so you know if you have this kind of problem, if you're dealing with debt, you can call us on the phone, and uh, these are a lot of these are just little emails that people sent on our website explaining their problem. But we communicate with people on the phone. When you call, we're going to ask you a series of questions, and we're going to ask her some questions, and we're going to explain to her that she can stop paying the credit card debt. She's going to be okay. Can use her money to maintain, to pay her expenses, her food, her medicine, her space rent, and to keep current on the trailer payment. You don't have to pay the old credit card debt. Things have a way of working out. That's one thing I've learned from helps is things have a way of working out, and you can always call us with your questions. Someone asked this question, and I put it in here because I get asked it all the time. What is considered old debt? Well, often I will talk, and that's part of my fault. I always talk about, we'll help you with your old debt. It doesn't matter how old your debt is. If we have 5 people that contact helps, maybe one's being sued, 3 or 4 are behind, and one is completely current on everything, and they finally realize they can't pay it. So if they use the credit card last month, and does that mean it's an old debt that it can be included with what it help you with? Yes, it can be. Okay, so it doesn't matter how old the debt is. Um, if my car, which is insured, hits someone, and let's say the damages are more than the insurance coverage, can they attach my house? So you have a certain amount of insurance coverage, okay? And I used to do personal injury when I was a younger attorney. A lot of cases. I was pretty good at that. And so let's say you had insurance coverage, and the minimum for your state was $25,000, and you happen to be in an accident. It's your fault, and you caused 50,000 or 100,000 worth of damage to someone, and you're a senior on Social Security, and maybe you're buying a home with a little bit of equity, and so you cause all this damage. Your insurance company is obligated to defend you, but if they see that the claim against you is worth a lot more than what the amount of insurance that they've contracted to pay on your behalf, they may offer what's called policy limits to the other side. And normally they're not going to do that unless the other side offers to release you from your claim. And as an attorney that used to represent people that were hurt, occasionally that would happen. There would be a certain amount of policy limits. And sometimes we'd look at the person's assets to see if it was worth trying to pursue their assets. And even if they had some assets over and above the policy limits, it just wasn't our practice. It's not the practice of attorneys that represent people involved in injuries that do that, especially if the person's a senior. Even though they have some excess equity in the home, they're not going to do it. They don't go after a person's home. It's just too complicated. There's ways it could be stopped. So I wouldn't worry about that. Okay? Yeah, you could always envision a scenario where something could happen. But I'm just telling you, with my over 4 decades of experience in this, dealing with it, it just doesn't happen. It's not worth worrying about. Okay, you can always call and talk to us too, and we'll go over it with you. Okay. Brian says, since you went all those letters from me to my creditors, the collections are disappearing from my credit reports. Why would they do that? I'm not complaining. I don't know. I don't know. Things happen sometimes. We don't know why. But if it's a good thing, count your blessings, right? Yeah. Here's one. Um, this is a note on one of our videos, and by reading the note here on one of our videos, the question, I can tell they haven't listened to too many of my videos, but so we often talk about the same things. But this person says, does senior have to pay previous unpaid IRS taxes? Well, it kind of depends. Uh, a lot of the seniors that we represent, seniors that have modest or lower incomes, poor, if they owe IRS taxes, probably not going to need to. You can get on what's called currently not collectible status, CNC status. Um, if your only income is Social Security, IRS is probably not going to do anything to try to collect the taxes from you. Um, the most they would ever do for a senior in this situation is they'd send you a notice saying they intend to offset 15% of your Social Security. But and that they would do no, they wouldn't do that until they gave you 60 days notice of intent to do that. Okay, so that would give you time to contact the IRS and get on currently not collectible status. If you have income, if you're single, of income about 2,500 or less, or $3,500 or less, if you're married, you should, or even a little bit more in certain areas of the country, you can qualify for currently not collectible status. We have emails that talk about that. You can contact us and we can go over that with you. Okay. So here was something. This was a comment on someone on a YouTube video on senior living that I do with them occasionally. The person says, if you have a substantial amount of savings or assets, how would you qualify to not pay your debt? If you are struggling, uh, means you do not have sufficient funds to survive. What is a qualifying senior? There has to be some limits. You cannot have assets and be qualified. What's the catch? So this person had listened to a video I did, and they said, well, gee, if you've got assets and you've got money, you know, shouldn't you have to use that to pay the debt? What's the catch? Okay. So here's my answer in a paragraph I wrote back about helps. And I said, there's no catch. I said, this is not a government program. A senior qualifies for helps if they have protected income, Social Security, pension, etc. Many of our clients have homes with equity. Various states' laws have protections for property, such as a car and a home, etc., in varying amounts. And then what is substantial assets is subjective. Okay? Substantial depends largely on where you live. The cost of living in Southern California for an 80-year-old widow can be significantly higher than for a person in Georgia or Kansas. So we don't make any judgments on if you have other assets. But it's never a problem for helps. We don't have people calling us that want to enroll in helps that have $200,000 or $300,000 or $100,000 in the bank account, and they have $10,000 in debt that they want to. These people don't call us. They pay their debt. Okay, so it kind of sorts itself out. It's not. So we don't have a hard and fast rule. If someone called helps and they had $200,000 in the bank account and they had $5,000 a month in income from a pension and Social Security, and they had 10,000 or 15,000 in debt, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't enroll them in helps. Okay, we'd say, You really don't need us. You just pay this debt, okay? But then there comes a point where there might be a line. Maybe it's a widow, and or it could be a whole, So no, it's not an issue. Okay, we don't have any regulations along this line. Okay, so this person contacts us from Oregon and says, "I'm 76-year-old woman with 40,000 of debt," and they contacted us back in 2023, a couple of years ago, that I don't want to burden my son with after my passing. Well, first off, I'm going to answer that you wouldn't burden your son with this debt. Okay, he's not going to be responsible for your debt. But she said, I would like to have survivorship rights. I would like to have him survivorship rights on his home, I think she's talking about, but I don't know what I need to do to make that happen. I've been trying to pay down the debt forever. Oh, and this is what I put. I feel like a gerbil on one of those wheels getting nowhere fast, or a hamster, they run around the wheels. I receive a $600 pension and about $1,250 in Social Security each month, so less than $2,000 a month. I started a small business online and made a little extra income that, and with that, I try to pay some of my debt. I spent a lot of time in my basement working on my business. I mention this because I'm receiving calls right down there. It's pretty much hit and miss. Okay, and then we called her back, and then she just called us a few days ago. Now she says, I'm 78-year-old, 2 or 3 years older. And she's not like a gerbil anymore. She says, I am drowning. We've heard that before. Drowning in debt. The debt now, instead of being 25,000 like it was before, did she give us an amount? I think so. It says it's 30,000. I've never missed a payment, always paid on time. But this month there's just simply not enough money. I have a small online business that was doing well, but suddenly in the last couple of months it has nearly disappeared. I relied heavily on that income, but it's not there anymore. And without that, my boat is sinking. And she received Social Security and her pension that gone up enough that she now makes a little bit more than $2,000 a month. She got a $400 credit card payment she just can't pay. So, and then we called her back, and she called us 2 or 3 or 4 times the last few days, last week. And we explained what we helped did. We sent her some emails. We reassured her that her son will not inherit the debt. We talked about how she could protect that home for her son by adding his name to the title as a joint owner with survivorship rights. And the note says that she was paying $829 for credit card debt. Now she doesn't have to pay it. She enrolled in Helps. She enrolled in Helps. So she could stop paying the credit card debt. Now she's got a little over $800 left over that she can use for basic expenses. And she's not getting any younger. I mean, and the business is dried up. You're going to be okay. And she's going to send us the creditor she owes money to. We're going to send them a cease and desist letter. Going to leave her alone. Like I earlier said, maybe 1 out of 5 of our clients are completely current on everything, but they finally realize they can't keep it up anymore. You don't have to be behind to enroll in Helps. You're going to be okay. Kat says, can you close accounts on each of the letters you sent because I'm getting statements with late charges on these accounts? that should be closed, right, by you or me. Okay. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act is the law that we operate under. It 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 protects you from unwanted contact by a debt collector, not an original creditor. There's nothing wrong with a credit card company or creditor that you owe money to by sending you a bill saying what you owe. You don't need to worry about that. If you know, when people are on it helps, we tell them if you don't want to get that bill, you could consider doing a change of address to have the bill get sent to your name. Care of helps with our address, or you can just chuck it in the garbage. You don't need to worry about it. There's nothing. If you close the account officially with them, you can't really do it as long as you owe money. They're going to still send you the bill. Okay, so you don't need to worry about that. Okay. Okay. Um, my husband and I, are in our late mid 70s. That's not me. This is an email. Okay. Okay. It says this person says my husband and I are in our mid late 70s. We are paying property taxes. Uh, our our combined income is around 20,000, and we haven't filed taxes since he retired. Last year, I started selling things on eBay. I've had for years. My total income before deduction was 5,000. Before deductions was 5,000. I don't know what, but I netted looks like 2,000. Do I have to file taxes? No, no. If you own something that you bought, you paid more for that item than what you're selling it for. It hasn't gone up in value, and so there's no income. It's you're selling something you own. There's no income. Not only that, even if you had income and your only income was Social Security, you can make about approximately $15,000, maybe even more, and you're still not required to file tax returns. So if you're really worried about it, you can get on the internet and type, "Am I required to file tax returns?" and get on the IRS website. But no, this person isn't going to be required to file tax returns. We don't give tax advice here. This isn't advice. I'm just giving information what the law is. Okay, pretty easy on that one. So this person contacts us from Washington. Um, my expenses are greater than in my income after being scammed. Uh, okay, this is actually a note from one of our paralegals that talked to this person. So he's living off his credit card debt. He owes 30,000 in credit card debt. He had a bankruptcy consultation. This was in Washington. So I'm laughing because the paralegal put down, she said, he was not satisfied with their lackluster interactions. I don't know what that means. Apparently, the person didn't like what the bankruptcy attorney had to say for whatever reason, or maybe they weren't explaining it in a good way. It was lackluster. Um, he had some heart issues and epilepsy. Health is not good. We explained. She explained to him how his income was protected. No one could touch his credit. No one could touch his Social Security and his pension. He didn't need to file bankruptcy. He didn't need to worry. And that's what we tell people all day long. You don't need to worry. $30,000 in credit card debt, he could stop paying it. Sometimes I'll tell people, you got three options. Um, you could deal with the problem on your own. Okay. You could file bankruptcy, but you don't need to file bankruptcy because they can't do anything to you, and maybe you can't afford to file bankruptcy. It's unnecessary, but you could file bankruptcy if you wanted to. And the third option is the HELPS program, where we represent you so you don't have to deal with the collectors. Now, if I tell people those three options, 1, 2, 3, whatever, three options, it's pretty easy what most people are going to want to do. They want to enroll in HELPS. The cost is minimal. We don't turn anyone away that needs our help. And the nice thing about HELPS is we represent you ongoing. It's not just one time. It's literally forever. So you don't have to deal with these debt collectors anymore. And if you ever have a question, you pick up the phone and you call. I talked to someone earlier today, and she kept saying, well, I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Olsen. I said, I don't want to hear that again. You're not bothering us when you call. HELPS was founded so that seniors would always be able to have someone to call. Okay? Doesn't matter how often. Okay. This person from Pennsylvania contacted us and they said, if I am judgment proof and cannot collect status, which means, if they get Social Security and all their assets are protected, no one can take anything from them. It doesn't matter if they get sued and get a judgment. They're kind of cut judgment proof. And I receive a lawsuit letter. How do I answer the letter, or do I just send a copy to HELPS to avoid a default? My only income is $2,100 from Social Security and a small pension. So this person apparently is a client, or they're going to be a client, and they want to know, hey, if I get sued, uh, what do I do to avoid it? We can't prevent you from being sued. You can be sued. We can't prevent them from getting a default judgment, but a default judgment is meaningless. That's what it means by your judgment proof. If someone gets a judgment, they can't collect from you. So when a person enrolls in HELPS, if you happen to get sued, and you could, you get us a copy of the lawsuit. We just need the first 2 or 3 pages. We send a letter to the attorney who sued you, let them know your income's protected. We're going to call you, tell you why you don't need to worry about it. And we're going to send you an email that explains why your income is protected, why your other assets are protected, so you don't need to worry. That's what we're here for. Okay. Person contacts us from California. I'm 65 years old, living on a small pension and Social Security benefits with credit card debt of about $20,000. Can you help me deal with this, and how much do you charge for your help? Okay. Yeah, we can help you deal with that. We have a guideline for our fees, uh, and we make it work for people. Normally, the most a person would ever pay would be $40 for 24 months, then $20 for 24 months free thereafter, or it might be, depends on your household income, or it could be $30 for 24 months, 15 for 24 months, and then free thereafter, or 20 for 24 months, and then 10 for 24 months and free thereafter. But we make it work for people. If you're having a problem, we can make it work. That's what we want. We want to help you. We don't want you to be out there and being hounded by creditors unless you want to be hounded by creditors. Okay? Which leads us to the next one that person wrote in. This must have read my mind. This person says, I'm being hounded by bill collectors for medical debt. Well, yeah. It doesn't matter what a debt that you owe that you can include with HELPS. It can be medical debt, credit card debt, loans, you name it. Now, we're not going to send a cease and desist letter to the IRS. We don't need to. We're going to tell you how to deal with that. But otherwise, we're going to send a cease and desist letter out to the creditors you owe money to. Okay. So this person contacts us from Texas. It says, I'm 67 years old, coming up sometime this summer. I'm living on Social Security and retirement benefits, and I get about $1,900 a month, and I have a judgment against me for almost $3,000. I have many other unpaid debt, but just one judgment at this time. I have a house that I inherited from my deceased mother. I own an old Ford truck, 2011 it looks like. But he says it's wrecked and undrivable. Wouldn't matter. I'm currently driving and purchasing in 2010 GMC. I'm behind on my income taxes. Last year I filed was 2021. Probably not required to file income taxes. And we'll tell him that. But anyway, he goes on. I'm in the middle of a divorce. He says we have nothing. I don't know what to do, and I'm tired of worrying about everything. That'd be a good topic. Tired of worrying about everything. I need the legal advice because on whether to file bankruptcy and what I need to do. I mean, you don't need to file bankruptcy. Your Social Security and your retirement is protected. You're judgment proof. You've got the home. No one's going to take the home. You live in Texas. Texas has an unlimited homestead exemption. You're going to be fine. If you don't want to be hounded by creditors, you're going to roll in the Alps. Let me talk about the divorce thing for a minute. Before I started HELPS, I probably filed between 30 and 40,000 bankruptcies. And my old law firm that I started is still in existence, and they are very successful. And they help a lot of people file bankruptcy because a lot of younger people do need to file bankruptcy. And I remember my younger brother, who was my partner, 14 years younger than me, my little brother. He's a great attorney. And sometimes we'd say, couples would come into us that would have financial problems, and they would have marriage problems. And my brother said, Eric, I think we save more marriages than any marriage counselor would ever dream about. And I said, you're right, Lars. We do. Because a lot of times in marriages, finances can be a huge problem. And if you have a couple come into you and you tell them, this is how to solve the problem, you're going to be okay with the money you're making. You don't need to worry about it. Whew, changes everything. And I'll tell you a story. I haven't told this story in a long time. In fact, I just thought of it. I went to a football game to watch one of my kids playing football. And I was sitting next to this guy. This kind of thing has happened to me more than once. I go to a football game and I sit next to this guy because I've met a lot of people in my life. And I sit next to this guy and kind of looked at him. And I knew that I knew him. I'd met him somewhere. Finally, and he could see I was looking at him. And then finally he says, yeah, you know who I am. And I said, no, I said, I'm sure we met. I said, who are you? And he says, I'm the guy you told to get married to the same woman for the third time. Then all of a sudden I remembered who he was. And he had come in and he had gotten divorced and remarried and divorced and remarried. And they came in a third time with his wife. And he told me their history. They had been married, divorced, married, and they're divorced. And now they were coming in together. They shared a bunch of kids. So even though they're divorced, they were still kind of tied to each other. And they told me their financial problems. And I told him, I said, you're not going to like this, but the solution is you need to get remarried again for the third time. And they both looked at me kind of cross-eyed. Well, they did get remarried for the third time. And then we filed a bankruptcy for them together. And hopefully this time it worked. Okay. Anyway, see if there's questions here. We're running out of time. Can you send a cease and desist letter to my landlord? Well, not if it's your current landlord, because you're going to get kicked out of your apartment. Now, if you've already moved and you're being hounded by past rent, sure. Yeah. I don't want to rub salt on a wound by sending a cease and desist letter out to your current landlord if you want to try to stay there. Okay. Couples should take a compatibility test. I'm barely compatible with me. That's true. Okay. So we just got a couple minutes. Let's see if I got another one to read here. This one person calls us from, looks like Maine. I'm getting statements from my City Diamond Card account, which is in your hands. So this must be a client. They keep piling on late fees every month. My latest statement has a minimum due now of $734. Ain't happening. Can you contact my City Card and tell them to stop sending me statements to me? Thanks. Helps. Okay. Well, what we can do is, or what you could do is, we're going to tell you to do a change. If you're a member of Helps and you have a statement you don't want to get, you can do a change of address on the bill to have the bill go to your name, care of Helps, with our address so you don't see it. Or you can chuck it in the garbage. You don't need to open it up and look at it. That could just make you feel more frustrated and exasperated. This person contacts us. He says, I used to be with the program. Occasionally people quit Helps. A lot of times when they quit Helps, they contact us and they want to get back on board because they start getting the notices again. Okay, and it says, I gave you notice before that I would be going to the Philippines for a few months. I got a notice again from an old debt collector and I want my peace of mind back. Please help me. So we're going to call this guy and get him back enrolled with Helps and send the letters out to the creditor so he doesn't need to worry. Okay, so it looks like we've come to the end of an hour. It's the first day of this week. We've got Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to go. And I got more things to talk about. And we will tomorrow. Please press the like button. If you're new to this channel and you've got questions, be sure and call us 855-435-7787 or look at our website, www.helpsishere, Helps ishere.org, or look at some more of our videos. God bless, and I will talk to you tomorrow, same time. Don't worry, you're going to be fine.